Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the recap. We just finished part 2 of the Good Life. Last week was the Kingdom Hunger, and now this week was Who's Really in Control.
Who is?
Yeah, who is in control? So can you give me a little bit about that title, Who's Really in Control?
Yeah, the title really came from, because the goal of the Good Life series, like as we've seen, is to work through the Beatitudes, Jesus' teachings about where we can find a flourishing life to experience the kingdom of heaven. And working through the ones we did today, verses 3 through 5, you really get the sense that we have to give up control, that a lot of these areas in life where we're trying to maintain control, trying to keep a stranglehold on life itself, isn't really the direction that we need to go. And so we really need to get to a place where we genuinely ask ourselves, who really is in control? Is it me? Is it God? Is it someone else? And we have to settle that in our minds.
Yeah, you spoke about how, in the world today, especially in America, we have a lot of things that are grabbing our attention, and having finances in order, and all these things.
Popularity, influence, being viewed as successful.
Yeah. It would be almost safe to say that when we are gravitating towards those elements in life, it's almost like that's taking the spot in our heart and not Jesus.
Yes. I mean, that's, I think, really the heart of what the message today, hopefully we would get from it, is that many of the things that, in church world, I'm going to say idolize, but basically an idol is anything that's taking the rightful place of God in our lives. So a lot of these things that we have in life that you mentioned, that we talked about, are good things. They're things that we can aspire to. They're things that we can find happiness in. The problem comes when we elevate them too highly, when we put them in a position in our lives to where they're not really intended to be. We think that true happiness, true long-lasting satisfaction, flourishing, the good life exists with those achievements. And then that's what pulls us into that incessant need to control everything, and we think we have to hold on to it or we lose everything.
Yeah. We want immediate justice. As in our human nature, we want that control, and we want to determine our outcomes. And that's not what God intended us to have. Right. That's part of our fallen nature. We want to be in that control.
And it's part of our fallen nature, but it's also a twisted element of it, because we didn't unpack it a lot in the message today because we didn't have time to, but if you go back to the creation story, then the narrative of Adam and Eve, of the origins of humanity was intended to rule and have dominion and authority. So, the control element of who we are and our being is built in by God. It's designed. But when sin enters in and we get all of our views a bit twisted, and we view things incorrectly, wrongly, however you say, that view of that control element that is natural, is granted to us by God, shifts to a darker, unhealthy side, unhealthy nature. And that's where we see coming in that we try to control things we shouldn't.
Yeah. Giving up control helps us experience the good life, because, God empowers us in the kingdom. And you mentioned something, or I was going to say something, by us not giving up control, we in a sense allow this to rule over our hearts and not Jesus.
Right.
And you said an ending statement is the good life is letting God be God.
Right.
So the question is how can we naturally understand what it means to be poor in spirit, mourning, and meek? Is it something that comes automatically? Is it something through our prayer? What does that look like?
Well, I think that it's both. As far as coming automatically, or something that you have to work on, much like the control element that we were talking about, where we're imbued naturally with an ability and a desire to control. We're created for that, created for dominion, and we're also created to recognize these elements. So whenever we're brought low, whenever we feel like we're at an impossible juncture in life, whenever we experience loss, that desire to mourn, whenever we respond to things that we believe are rightfully ours. I think that all of that is wired into us naturally by God to recognize those things, to experience them. But then what we're told by culture, what we're conditioned to believe, things within our own minds that we just want to believe. I mean, it may not necessarily be conditioning or may not be cultural. It may just be our broken nature desiring to elevate that position of control up above. We want more authority. We desire more than what is natural. So then we push back against those natural tendencies where it may be natural to experience mourning because we are seeing something that's not right. But then our prideful area to control, we want to push it aside and say, no, that's not right. We don't need to feel that. So really you get both, and I think that on one side, you need to be aware of those situations, aware of those feelings. And when you do start to experience them, I think it is healthy to take a step back and pray. Try to spend some time with God, meet with some fellow Christian brothers and sisters who maybe in a small group, in a community group that you might have, to share what you're walking through, to get some other perspective on it, to help keep you, maybe put some guardrails in place to keep you from taking those steps to, push it to the side and make it as if it's nothing. So it really is a hurdle. You do have to push through a lot of instincts that you have, but I think that we do have natural tendencies created within us that will reveal those to us, and especially those of us who are followers of Jesus, who are indwelt with His Spirit, that the Spirit does speak to us in those times to tell us things, to guide us, but we don't always want to listen. And I think that's the thing. You need to be very aware of your own walk, trying to be focused on your walk with Jesus, staying in Scripture, studying, staying in community, staying in groups, staying in a deep prayer life, focusing on who you're supposed to be more in tune with those things when the Spirit's speaking to you. I know it's probably not a helpful answer. It's kind of all the above that you asked for, but...
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes I catch myself of holding on to whatever it is that prevents me from seeing the good life.
Sure.
And I just went through it yesterday praying, God, whatever this is that I'm holding on to, I'll just let go and guide me to let go. Pastor Chris, thank you so much
Mike.
for this week's recap.
Yeah.
Remember, the ending statement for today is the good life is letting God be God. So thank you guys for tuning in to this week's recap, and we will see you guys next week. Have a blessed week.